Your hand trembles, but not from weakness. The ornate silver spoon catches the flickering candlelight as you lift it above Paolo's wine goblet, and for a moment, just a moment, the world holds its breath. The dining chamber of the Palazzo Medici stretches around you like a tomb, its marble walls weeping with condensation from the Florentine heat. July 1587. The silk of your gown clings to your throat like a noose, heavy with pearls that feel more like shackles with each passing day. One drop, clear as tears, odorless as prayer. The aqua tofana slides from the spoon's tip into the burgundy wine, disappearing without trace. 847. You've counted each one over these 18 months, marking them in your memory like a rosary of damnation. Your husband approaches the table, his boots echoing against stone with the arrogant rhythm of a man who has never known fear, never suspected that death walks beside him in silk slippers and speaks with his wife's voice. Isabella, cara miak. Paolo's voice booms across the chamber, thick with wine already consumed and laughter that cuts through you like glass. Tomorrow we hunt wild boar in the Maremma. You should see the beast they say roams there. Tusks like daggers, eyes like the devil himself. He settles into his chair with the casual brutality that has defined your marriage, reaching immediately for the goblet you've prepared. Your goblet. Your gift. Your instrument. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue as you watch him lift the wine to his lips. His throat works as he swallows, Adam's apple bobbing with each gulp of poisoned vintage. You maintain your smile, that perfect, practiced expression that has become as much a part of your evening ritual as the poison itself. How thrilling, amorous, you reply, your voice steady despite the hurricane in your chest. I pray the Virgin keeps you safe from such monsters. If only he knew, if only he could taste the irony along with the arsenic. Paolo sets down the goblet with a satisfied sigh, wine staining his lips red as fresh blood. You worry too much, wife. What beast could harm Paolo Giordano Orsini? He laughs again. That sound that once made you flinch, but now merely marks another successful evening in your campaign of patient murder. Besides, I have you to return to. My beautiful Isabella, my perfect little dove. Dove. The word lands like a slap. You are no dove. You are something far more dangerous, something he helped create through 2 decades of systematic cruelty disguised as marriage. Your fingers, steady now where they once shook, reach across the table to touch his hand. The contact burns, but you've learned to embrace such burns. They remind you that you're still alive, still capable of feeling something beyond the numbness that has become your constant companion. Tell me more about this hunt, you say, settling into your own chair with practiced grace. The candlelight dances across your face, casting shadows that hide the calculation in your eyes. Around you, servants move like ghosts, refilling platters and avoiding your gaze. They know. Not the details, perhaps, but they sense the wrongness that permeates these evening meals, the way death has learned to dine at your table. Paolo launches into his tale, gesturing wildly with hands that tremble slightly, a tremor that has grown more pronounced over the past month. His voice carries the familiar note of excitement that accompanies his discussions of violence, whether directed at beasts or peasants or, in earlier years, at you. But tonight there's something else, a breathiness, an occasional pause to clear his throat. The poison is working faster now, your careful escalation bearing fruit like a poisonous tree, finally ready for harvest. You nod at appropriate moments, ask leading questions, play the role of devoted wife with the skill of an actress trained by necessity and perfected by repetition. But inside, you're counting. Each labored breath, each moment he pauses to steady himself, each drop of sweat that beads on his forehead despite the evening's coolness. This is your art now, not the painting you abandoned years ago, but the slow, methodical creation of a masterpiece in murder. The great irony presses against your consciousness like a physical weight. You have become exactly what this marriage, this system, this world demanded you become. Not the artistic soul who once dreamed of creating beauty, but a beautiful destroyer, a smiling death, a perfect wife who serves poison with the same devotion other women serve love. Paolo drains the last of his wine and reaches for your hand across the table. His skin feels fevered, clammy with the sweat of a body fighting a war it doesn't understand. "I am blessed," he says, his eyes meeting yours with something that might once have been affection, but now feels like the last words of a man already dead. "Blessed to have a wife who tends to me so faithfully." You squeeze his hand and smile, that perfect smile that has become your mask, your weapon, your epitaph. "Until death do us part, Samoro," you whisper, and the words carry more truth than he will ever know. Tater, Florence, 1565, 22 years earlier. Sunlight streams through the tall windows of your private chamber, illuminating the canvas before you, where you've been trying to capture the way morning light transforms the Arno's waters into liquid gold. Your fingers, unstained by poison but rich with ochre and ultramarine, move across the surface with the confidence of youth and talent. This is who you are, Isabella de' Medici, daughter of the Grand Duke, but more importantly, artist, dreamer, a girl who believed she might shape her own destiny. The paintbrush feels right in your hand, an extension of your soul rather than a tool. You've been working since dawn on this piece, a view from your window that somehow captures not just the river, but the feeling of freedom, the sense that Florence spreads before you like an endless promise. Your tutor, Maestro Bronzino, has told you that you possess la mano divina, the divine hand. "Few women," he said just yesterday, "understand colour as you do, Principessa. You see what others merely look at." The door to your chamber crashes open without ceremony, without the gentle knock that usually announces visitors. Your father strides in, Cosimo I de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany, his presence filling the room like storm clouds blocking out the sun. Behind him follows Cardinal Giovanni, your brother, his red robes rustling with self-importance, and several men you recognize as councillors and secretaries. Their faces wear the expressions of those about to deliver news that will reshape a life, your life, without bothering to ask your opinion. "Isabella," your father announces without preamble, his voice carrying the tone he uses for state proclamations, "set aside your diversions. We must speak." Diversions. The word hits you like cold water. You lower your brush slowly, watching a drop of blue paint fall from its tip to stain the stone floor. Even this small act of creation interrupted, even this moment stolen from you. "Yes, Baba," you reply, though something in your chest already knows what comes next. "You are to be married," Cardinal Giovanni announces with the casual brutality that makes him such an effective churchman. The negotiations have been concluded. Paolo Giordano Orsini, Duke of Bracciano, has accepted our terms. The ceremony will take place within the month. The brush falls from your fingers entirely now, clattering against the easel before hitting the floor. Married. The word feels foreign in your mouth, like speaking in a language you've never learned. "But I haven't even met." "You will meet him at the betrothal ceremony," your father interrupts, moving to examine your painting with the detached interest he might show a piece of furniture being moved from one room to another. "This is quite good, daughter. Perhaps you can return to such pastimes once you've produced heirs and fulfilled your duties to the Orsini family." Pastimes, duties, heirs. Each word falls on your ears, like the sound of doors slamming shut, one after another, until you can barely breathe. You look around your chamber, your sanctuary, and suddenly see it differently. Not as your private world of creation and possibility, but as a cell where you've been kept until the moment you could be transferred to another cell, another master, another life that was never meant to be yours. What if I refuse? The words escape before you can stop them, hanging in the air like blasphemy in a cathedral. The silence that follows stretches until it becomes a living thing, coiled and dangerous. Your father turns from the painting to fix you with a stare that has cowed princes and made kings reconsider their positions. Refuse, he repeats, as if you've spoken in an ancient tongue. Isabella, you seem to misunderstand your purpose. You are a Medici woman. Your marriage to Orsini secures an alliance that protects Florence, strengthens our family's position, and fulfills God's plan for your life. There is no refusing any more than the sun might refuse to rise. Cardinal Giovanni steps forward, his voice taking on the tone he uses for sermons. Marriage is a sacrament, sister. Through your union with Paolo Giordano, you serve not only our family, but the Church and the natural order that God has established. Your artistic interests are charming diversions for a girl, but a woman's true canvas is her family, her children, her submission to her husband's will. You want to scream. You want to grab your paints and hurl them against the walls, to destroy everything in this room that suddenly feels like a beautiful trap. Instead, you find yourself nodding, the motion mechanical as a puppet's. Yes, Your Eminence. Yes, Babbo, I understand. But you don't understand. Not yet. You won't understand until your wedding night, when Paolo's wine-soaked breath scalds your neck and his hands teach you that your body, like your life, belongs to him now. You won't understand until he burns your paintings 3 months later, claiming they're unsuitable for a married woman. You won't understand until the first time he strikes you for speaking when he hasn't given permission, or the second time, or the dozenth time when you stop counting and start planning. For now, you're still 15 and still believe that somehow, some way, you might find space within this marriage to remain yourself. Your father's counselors begin discussing dowry arrangements and ceremony details, their voices washing over you like water over stone. You stare at your unfinished painting, the Arno frozen mid-flow, the light captured but incomplete, your vision interrupted at the moment of becoming something beautiful. A servant appears as if summoned by some invisible signal, moving to clean your brushes and pack away your supplies. Carefully, you whisper as she wraps each brush in silk. Please be careful with them. She nods with the practiced sympathy of someone who has witnessed many such endings, many such small deaths that precede the larger ones. Your paints disappear into boxes, your canvases stacked and stored, your easel folded like broken wings. The room grows larger around you as your world shrinks, sunlight still streaming through the windows but illuminating nothing now except the growing shadows. The Orsini are a powerful family, your father says as he prepares to leave, his tone softening slightly in what he probably believes is comfort. Paolo is young, wealthy, connected to the most important houses in Italy. You will want for nothing, Isabella. Nothing except choice. Nothing except self. Nothing except the girl who painted light on water and believed she might create something beautiful in this world instead of becoming something beautiful for others to possess and eventually destroy. As the door closes behind the last of the men who have just redistributed your life like chess pieces on a board, you stand alone in your chamber. No longer your chamber, you realize, but simply the room where Isabella de' Medici used to live. Tomorrow, servants will begin packing your belongings for transport to your new home. Tonight, you have only these final hours to grieve for the woman you will never become. You pick up the fallen brush, still damp with blue paint, and hold it like a relic of a faith you're about to abandon. Outside, Florence continues its ancient dance of beauty and power, art and politics, love and arrangement. But for you, the dance has ended before it truly began. The girl who might have painted masterpieces dies quietly in a palazzo chamber, while somewhere across the city, a woman who will learn to master poison is being born. Florence, 1574, 9 years into your marriage, The basement chambers of the Palazzo Pitti smell of damp stone and secrets. You follow Bianca Capello down stone steps worn smooth by centuries of feet, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat in the narrow stairwell. Torchlight flickers against walls that have witnessed more conspiracies than prayers, casting shadows that dance like the ghosts of women who came before you, women who learned, as you are learning, that survival requires fluency in languages no convent ever taught. "Careful with the hem of your gown," Bianca murmurs, her voice carrying the musical accent of her Venetian origins. Your brother Francesco's mistress moves through these underground passages with the confidence of someone who has made peace with darkness. These corridors were not designed for court dress, but then again, neither was the work we do here. You gather your skirts carefully, the heavy silk whispering against stone as you descend. 9 years of marriage have taught you many things: how to hide bruises with cosmetics, how to smile while your husband's hands leave marks on your throat, how to perform the duties of a wife while your soul retreats to some unreachable place within. But tonight, Bianca promises to teach you something different. Tonight, you learn how to fight back. The chamber at the bottom of the stairs opens before you like a secret world. Vaulted ceilings disappear into shadow above, while below, tables hold an alchemist's collection of bottles, vials, and instruments that gleam with purpose. The air tastes metallic, sharp with the scent of compounds you can't identify but somehow recognize as dangerous. This is not the refined world of your upbringing, all marble and silk and careful manners. This is something older, more primal, the place where women's true education begins. "Welcome," Bianca says, gesturing to the collection before you, "to the university they never built for us." Her laugh carries an edge that speaks of knowledge bought with pain. "Here we study subjects that would make the professors at Bologna weep: the chemistry of liberation, the mathematics of revenge, the art of patient justice." You move closer to examine the bottles, each labelled in a careful hand with names that sound like prayers to dark saints: Acqua Tofana, Acqua di Perugia, La Cantarella. The liquid inside each vial appears innocent clear as holy water, odourless as air. These are. You begin, then trail off, understanding dawning like sunrise after a terrible night. Equalizers. Bianca completes your thought with satisfying precision. The sword and shield that God neglected to provide when he made us women. Paolo has been difficult lately, has he not? The understatement draws a bitter laugh from your throat. Paolo's latest difficulty involved 3 broken ribs and a black eye you've spent weeks explaining away with stories of clumsiness, of falls from horses, of anything except the truth that your husband uses you as other men use practice dummies for sword work. He grows more creative in his expressions of displeasure. Bianca nods with the grim understanding of sisterhood. Francesco was the same before I learned to speak his language. She lifts one of the vials, holding it up to catch the torchlight. This particular dialect is called Acqua Tofana, named for Giulia Tofana, a woman who understood that sometimes the only path to justice runs through a wine glass. You watch the liquid catch the light, seeming to glow with its own inner fire. How does it? Slowly, Bianca explains, her voice taking on the tone of a teacher discussing natural philosophy. That is its beauty, its mercy, and its protection all in one. Administered properly, a drop here, a drop there, always carefully spaced, it mimics the wasting diseases that claim so many men of our husband's age and temperament. No one suspects, no one investigates, the victim simply fades. The clinical precision with which she discusses murder should horrify you. Instead, you feel something that has been missing from your life for 9 years, hope. You hear yourself ask, the words emerging from some deep place where the girl who painted sunlight on water still lives, still fights. 6 months to 2 years, depending on the dosage and the constitution of the subject. Bianca's smile carries the satisfaction of someone who has solved a complex mathematical problem. Paolo is strong, but he drinks heavily. His liver already does half our work for us. With careful application. She shrugs eloquently. You reach out to touch the vial, your fingers trembling not with fear, but with something that might be reverence. The glass feels warm against your skin, as if it contains not poison but liquid possibility. Who else knows of this? More women than you might think, fewer than should. Bianca moves to another table, where measuring devices wait with scientific precision. There is a network, Isabella. Women who have learned that survival sometimes requires advanced education. We teach each other, protect each other, provide alibis when needed. The concept staggers you. An entire underground university where women study the subjects men would never permit them to learn. While your husband believes you spend your afternoons in prayer and embroidery, you could be here, mastering chemistry that puts the philosophers of Padua to shame. While he sleeps off his wine, you could be calculating doses with precision that would humble the court physicians. The risks. You begin, but Bianca cuts you off with a gesture, are considerable, she agrees. But what risk do you take by continuing as you are? How many more beatings can your body absorb? How many more years can your spirit survive? She moves closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries more authority than any sermon you've heard from Cardinal Giovanni. You are dying already, Isabella. This simply lets you choose how, as a victim or as an artist. Artist. The word hits you like lightning, illuminating connections you hadn't seen before. This is art. The careful composition of elements, the precise timing, the gradual creation of something that didn't exist before. Not beauty, perhaps, but justice. Not love, but liberation. Bianca begins your first lesson, showing you how to measure, how to test, how to recognize the signs of effectiveness without arousing suspicion. Her hands move with the sure grace of someone who has practiced these motions until they become second nature, like a painter mixing colors or a musician fingering scales. You watch, memorize, practice until your own movements begin to carry the same certainty. Remember, she says as the lesson concludes, patience is your greatest ally. Rush, and you reveal yourself. Show mercy, and you doom yourself. This is not a crime of passion, Isabella. It is a work of art that requires months of careful execution. You nod, tucking the small vial she gives you into the hidden pocket sewn into your gown's seam. The weight of it seems insignificant, but you know you're carrying something more dangerous than gunpowder, more valuable than gems. You're carrying the power to reshape your world, one carefully measured drop at a time. As you climb back toward the world of marble and silk, your mind already begins calculating. Paolo's evening wine, his morning ale, the special possets you prepare when he complains of headaches brought on by too much drink and too little conscience. Each presents an opportunity, a canvas upon which you might paint your masterpiece of patient revenge. The girl who once created beauty from pigment and possibility is gone, died in a marriage bed 9 years ago. But the woman who climbs these stairs carries something more powerful than paintbrushes, more lasting than any artwork. She carries the tools to create her own freedom, her own justice, her own terrible and necessary art. The basement door closes behind you with a sound like a tomb ceiling, but for the first time in years, you feel more alive than dead. Above you, Paolo probably lies drunk in his chambers, secure in his power over you, confident in his safety within the walls of marriage and law and tradition. If only he knew that his faithful wife has just enrolled in a university that will teach her to become his most intimate enemy. If only he understood that the woman who serves his meals and shares his bed now carries in her pocket the ingredients for his epitaph. Tomorrow, your real education begins. A. Florence, 1586. 18 months into your campaign, you stare at your reflection, in the polished silver mirror, and a stranger stares back. The woman in the glass wears your face, your jewels, your carefully arranged hair, but her eyes hold knowledge that Isabella de Medici, the artist, the dreamer, even the victim, never possessed. You raise your hand to touch the mirror's surface, and she mirrors the movement with mechanical precision. Your fingertips meet the cool metal where her face should be, and you wonder which of you is real anymore. 18 months. 547 drops. Paolo's health declines with the methodical precision of a master craftsman's work, and you have become that craftsman. The tremor in his hands has worsened to the point where he can barely hold a goblet steady. His skin carries the yellowish pallor that speaks of a liver fighting a losing battle against an enemy it cannot identify. When he wakes in the mornings, it takes him longer to orient himself, longer to remember where he is, who he is, why his body feels like it's betraying him from within. You have become an expert in your husband's deterioration, documenting each symptom with the precision of a natural philosopher studying the movements of celestial bodies. The irony tastes bitter as the poison itself. You, who were never permitted to study medicine or natural philosophy, now know more about the progressive effects of arsenic poisoning than most court physicians. You understand dosage calculations, metabolism rates, the way different foods and wines affect absorption. Your underground education has made you more learned than any university could have. The woman in the mirror smiles, and you realize the expression wasn't conscious. This other self, this poisoner, this patient executioner, takes pleasure in her expertise. She has created a masterpiece of suffering that unfolds day by day with the inevitability of seasons changing. Where Isabella once mixed pigments to capture light, this woman mixes compounds to create darkness. Where Isabella once brought beauty into the world, this woman brings carefully measured death. A knock at your chamber door interrupts your examination of the stranger who wears your life. Enter, you call, watching the woman in the mirror arrange her features into an expression of wifely concern. The transformation happens automatically now, like breathing. Your lady-in-waiting, Maria, steps inside with her arms full of linens. Her eyes meet yours in the mirror's reflection, and you see something there that has grown over these months, a careful neutrality that speaks of knowledge she wishes she didn't possess. Maria has served in noble households for 20 years. She has watched other wives tend to mysteriously ailing husbands. She knows. The Duke requests your presence in his chambers, Madonna, Maria says, her voice carrying the practiced emptiness of someone who no longer questions what she witnesses. He had difficulty rising this morning. The physicians are with him now. You set down the mirror and turn to face Maria directly. How does he seem today? The question emerges with perfectly calibrated concern, not so much as to appear suspicious, not so little as to seem cold. You have rehearsed this tone until it became your natural voice when discussing Paolo's health. Weak, Madonna. Confused. He asked 3 times who had prepared his morning ale. Maria's pause carries weight. Dr. Mercuriale seems puzzled by the persistence of his symptoms. Dr. Mercuriale, the court's most respected physician, summoned from Padua when Paolo's local doctors proved inadequate to explain his declining health. You've watched him examine your husband with growing frustration, prescribing treatments that cannot address a problem he doesn't understand. His presence should terrify you, but instead you feel the scholar's pride in creating a puzzle that challenges even the most learned minds of your age. I will go to him immediately, you say, rising with the graceful concern of a devoted wife. But as you pass the mirror, you catch another glimpse of that stranger's face, and this time you see something that stops you cold: satisfaction. Not the grief of a wife watching her husband suffer, but the artist's pleasure in seeing her work progress according to plan. The realization should horrify you. Instead, it feels like coming home. You make your way through the palazzo's corridors with measured steps. nodding to servants who bow with the respect due to a woman whose husband grows more dependent on her care each day. Your reputation as a devoted wife has grown alongside Paolo's illness. Visitors comment on your dedication, your tireless attention to his needs, your visible distress at his mysterious affliction. You have become a paragon of wifely virtue, even as you perfect your technique in murder. Paolo's chambers smell of sickness and fear. The once powerful man who used to fill rooms with his presence now seems diminished, propped up against pillows like a broken doll. Dr. Mercuriale stands beside the bed with two younger physicians, their faces wearing the frustration of men whose learning has proven inadequate to the challenge before them. Isabella, Cara, Paolo's voice rasps as you enter. Even his pet names for you sound different now, less possessive, more desperate. Tell them. Tell them about the stomach pains. They don't believe me about the burning. You move to his bedside with perfect wifely solicitude, taking his hand in yours. His skin feels thin as parchment, fevered and damp. The hand that once struck you now trembles like a frightened bird in your grasp. The pains began 3 weeks ago, you tell the physicians, your voice carrying exactly the right note of distressed concern. Worse after meals, especially in the evenings. And the confusion seems to worsen as well. Doctor. Mercuriale nods gravely, making notes on his parchment. And you've noticed no improvement with the treatments we've prescribed. If anything, he seems weaker, you reply, allowing your voice to break slightly. I fear I am losing him. The words taste like communion wine on your tongue, bitter with the knowledge that they represent a kind of truth, albeit not the kind these learned men would understand. Paolo squeezes your hand with what strength he has left. She never leaves my side, he tells the doctors with pathetic gratitude. Prepares all my meals herself, tends to me day and night. I am blessed in my wife. Blessed. The word echoes in your mind as you arrange your features into an expression of loving devotion. You are his blessing, his curse, his salvation, and his doom, all wrapped in silk and pearls. You are the perfect wife who serves poison with the same devotion other women serve love. After the physicians leave with promises to consult their texts for similar cases, you remain alone with Paolo. He sleeps fitfully, his breath coming in shallow gasps that speak of a body slowly surrendering to forces it cannot comprehend. You sit beside his bed with your embroidery, playing the role of devoted wife keeping vigil, while inside your mind calculates how many more drops it will take to complete your masterpiece. The afternoon light streaming through the windows illuminates Paolo's wasted features with the kind of clarity that reveals truth beneath surfaces. This man destroyed the girl who painted light on water. He burned her canvases, broke her brushes, beat the dreams from her body until she learned to dream of nothing but survival. Now she has survived by becoming something he never anticipated, an artist whose medium is not pigment but poison, whose masterpiece is not beauty but justice. When evening comes, you prepare his usual posset with your usual care. 1 drop tonight. You've learned to space them carefully now that his body has grown more sensitive. Too much, and he might die too quickly, arousing suspicion. Too little, and he might recover, forcing you to begin again. But just enough. Just enough to continue the gradual transformation of Paolo Giordano Orsini from living man to cautionary tale. As you stir the poison into his evening drink, your reflection catches in the silver spoon's surface. For just a moment, you see her clearly, the stranger who has taken over your life, the woman who measures murder in drops and counts success in her husband's suffering. She doesn't look like a monster. She looks like a wife preparing medicine for her ailing husband. She looks like love disguised as death, or perhaps death disguised as love. The distinction no longer matters. The girl who might have chosen mercy died years ago in a marriage bed. The woman who survived her death learned to speak fluency in languages no convent ever taught, to practice arts no university would acknowledge, to create masterpieces no gallery will ever display. Paolo drinks his posset with trusting gratitude, and you hold his hand as the poison begins its nightly work. In the morning, Dr. Mercuriale will return to find his patient slightly weaker, slightly more confused, slightly closer to the inevitable conclusion of your patient artistry. The stranger in the mirror will smile with the satisfaction of work well done. You have become a performance so complete that even you sometimes forget where Isabella ends and the devoted wife begins. Every morning you wake before dawn to prepare Paolo's breakfast with your own hands, a ritual that the servants praise as evidence of your extraordinary devotion, never suspecting that devotion has become the perfect camouflage for methodical murder. Your reputation throughout Florence grows with each passing week. Isabella de' Medici, the wife who sacrifices everything for her husband's mysterious illness. This morning follows the pattern you've perfected over these long months. You descend to the kitchens while the palazzo still sleeps, your silk slippers silent on stone stairs worn smooth by centuries of servants. The cooks nod respectfully as you enter their domain, no longer surprised by your presence, having grown accustomed to your insistence on preparing Paolo's meals personally. The Madonna is too good to her husband, they whisper among themselves, and you smile with appropriate modesty while measuring poison with scientific precision. The morning posset requires delicate work. Paolo's stomach can no longer tolerate rich foods, so you prepare a simple mixture of warm ale, honey, and herbs that will mask the bitter aftertaste of today's dose. 2 drops of aqua tofana, carefully counted, swirled into the mixture with a silver spoon that catches the early light filtering through the kitchen windows. Your hands no longer tremble. If anything, they've grown steadier with practice, more certain in their terrible purpose. Madonna Isabella, old Giuseppe the head cook, observes as he kneads bread for the morning meal. You tend the Duke with the devotion of a saint. Surely God sees your sacrifice. You arrange your features into an expression of humble acceptance, the way you've seen truly pious women respond to such praise. He is my husband, you reply softly, lifting the poisoned posset to check its temperature against your wrist, a gesture that speaks of maternal care even as you deliver death in measured doses. Until death parts us, I am bound to serve him. The words carry more layers of meaning than Giuseppe could ever imagine. You are bound to serve Paolo, bound to serve him exactly what he deserves, measured out in drops and delivered with the smile he taught you to wear through years of brutality disguised as marriage. Death will indeed part you, but not in the way the marriage vows intended. Climbing back to Paolo's chambers, you practice your expression of wifely concern. The performance has become so natural that you sometimes catch yourself looking genuinely worried about his condition, not from love, but from the artist's anxiety about her work reaching its proper conclusion. You've invested too much in this project to see it fail now through carelessness or haste. Paolo lies propped against his pillows, looking more fragile each morning. His skin has taken on the waxy pallor that speaks of organs slowly surrendering their function, and his eyes hold the confusion of a mind struggling to comprehend why his body betrays him. When you enter carrying his morning meal, his face lights with the pathetic gratitude of someone who has learned to depend entirely on another's care. "Cara Maya," he whispers, reaching out with trembling hands to touch your wrist as you set the tray beside his bed. "What would I do without you? The physicians speak of sending me to take the waters at Montecatini, but I cannot bear the thought of leaving you behind. The irony tastes sweeter than honey, Paolo, who once forbade you from travelling beyond the Palazzo gardens without his express permission, now cannot imagine existing without your constant presence. You have made yourself indispensable to him through the very means by which you're destroying him. You must not think of such things," you murmur, lifting the posset to his lips with the gentle insistence of a mother feeding a child. I would never allow you to face this illness alone. He drinks trustingly, completely, allowing you to support his head while he swallows his daily dose of death. The intimacy of the moment should revolt you, but instead you feel the cold satisfaction of a job performed with consummate skill. This is your art now, the perfect performance of love that conceals perfect revenge. Dr. Ter. Mercuriale arrives as you're helping Paolo with his morning ablutions, another carefully choreographed scene in your ongoing performance. You greet the physician with exactly the right mixture of hope and desperation, your voice carrying the tremor of a woman barely holding herself together through her husband's mysterious decline. Doctor, thank God you've come, you say, rising from Paolo's bedside with your hands clasped in supplication. He seemed better yesterday evening, but this morning, the confusion has returned, and he complains again of burning in his stomach. Doctor. Mercuriale examines Paolo with the thorough attention of a scholar confronted by a particularly vexing problem. He checks the pulse, examines the eyes, prods the abdomen while Paolo winces and groans. You watch from the corner with your embroidery, the picture of wifely devotion maintaining her vigil, occasionally offering details about symptoms you've observed during your constant attendance. The wasting continues, Dr. Mercuriale mutters to his assistant, loud enough for you to hear. Despite all treatments, despite the obviously excellent care he receives, his gaze flickers to you with something that might be admiration for your devotion. I confess myself puzzled, Madonna. In my years of practice, I have seldom seen such a persistent decline in a man of the Duke's formerly robust constitution. You allow tears to gather in your eyes, not difficult given the emotional exhaustion that has become your constant companion. Please, doctor, there must be something more we can do. I cannot bear to lose him. The words emerge with such convincing anguish that you almost believe them yourself. After the physician leaves with promises to consult with colleagues in Padua and Bologna, you remain with Paolo as he drifts in and out of feverish sleep. His breathing has grown more labored over these past weeks, and you find yourself listening to its rhythm with the attention of a musician following a complex composition. Each labored inhalation brings him closer to the finale you've been composing for 18 months. The afternoon brings visitors. Paolo's cousin Marcello and his wife come to pay their respects to the mysteriously ailing Duke. You receive them in the reception chamber with red-rimmed eyes and hands that shake with perfectly performed anxiety. Your reputation as the devoted wife has spread throughout Roman society. These visitors come not just to see Paolo, but to witness your legendary dedication. Madonna Isabella, Marcello's wife, breathes with the reverence reserved for living saints. We have heard of your selfless care for our dear Paolo. Surely no wife in all of Italy tends her husband with greater devotion. You accept their praise with the humility that has become second nature, deflecting attention from your virtue while ensuring it burns more brightly in their memories. I only do what love demands, you reply, dabbing at your eyes with a linen handkerchief. Paolo has been. He has been the joy of my life, to see him suffer so. The performance continues through dinner, where you pick at your food with the distracted air of someone too worried to eat properly. You excuse yourself frequently to check on Paolo, returning each time with reports of his condition that paint you as the perfect wife, bearing an impossible burden with grace that would humble angels. Late that evening, after the visitors have departed with promises to pray for Paolo's recovery and your strength, you sit alone in your chambers and study your reflection once more. The woman in the mirror looks genuinely exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, a pallor that speaks of sleepless nights and constant worry. The irony strikes you like lightning. In pretending to be destroyed by Paolo's illness, you have actually begun to destroy yourself. The performance has become so complete, so consuming that you've lost track of where the act ends and reality begins. You are genuinely exhausted from months of careful calculation, constant vigilance, and the psychological strain of maintaining perfect innocence while committing perfect murder. You have become the devoted wife, even as you've become the patient executioner. Tomorrow will bring another dawn, another poisoned meal prepared with loving hands, another day of performing grief for a man whose death you've orchestrated with scientific precision. The woman in the mirror nods as if she understands. This too is art. This complete transformation of self into role, this surrender of identity to performance, so total that performer and performance become indistinguishable. You have achieved the perfect disguise by becoming what you pretend to be, even as what you pretend to be slowly kills the woman who began this elaborate masquerade. In trying to murder Paolo, you have succeeded in murdering Isabella, not through poison, but through the more subtle toxin of perfect performance sustained beyond human endurance. The devoted wife sleeps fitfully, dreaming of morning meals that need preparing, while the poisoner counts drops in her sleep, and neither woman remembers who started this dance or how it might end. Florence, July 1587. The end approaches. Virginio Orsini arrives without warning on a morning when the Tuscan sun beats down like God's own judgment, and you know immediately that everything is about to change. Paolo's younger brother strides into the palazzo with the purposeful gait of a man who suspects something but cannot yet name what he suspects. His eyes, Paolo's eyes, but sharper, more calculating, sweep over you with an attention that makes your carefully cultivated composure feel suddenly fragile. Sister, he greets you with formal courtesy that carries undertones of suspicion. I have come to see my brother. Reports of his have reached Rome with troubling consistency. You curtsy with precisely the right degree of grateful relief, your silk gown rustling as you rise to meet his gaze with eyes that have learned to radiate nothing but wifely devotion. Virginio, thank heaven you've come. Paolo will be so pleased to see you. He has been asking for family. But as you lead him through the palazzo's corridors toward Paolo's chambers, you sense something different in Virginio's attention, a quality of observation that goes beyond normal family concern. When you glance sideways at him, you catch him studying not the tapestries or artwork that usually capture visitors' attention, but you. Your posture, your pace, the way your hands move when you speak. A hunter's gaze, patient and methodical. Paolo's chamber has become a shrine to invalidism, heavy with the scents of medicinal herbs and the close air of a room where windows remain shuttered against light that hurts weakened eyes. Your husband lies propped against pillows like a broken marionette, his once powerful frame reduced to angles and shadows beneath expensive linens. When Virginio sees him, you watch his face carefully for signs of shock, grief, suspicion. What you see instead is something more dangerous: calculation. Fratello mioc, Virginio says, moving to Paolo's bedside with an expression of carefully controlled concern. You look. You have lost weight. Paolo's laugh comes out as a wheeze. Lost more than weight, brother. Lost strength, lost clarity. Some days I lose myself entirely. His trembling hand reaches toward you where you stand at the foot of the bed. Only Isabella keeps me anchored to this world. Without her care, yes. Virginio's voice carries a note you can't quite identify. Isabella's devotion has become legendary throughout Rome. They say she prepares all your meals herself, tends to you day and night with the dedication of a saint. The praise should please you. It represents the perfect success of your carefully constructed reputation. Instead, something in Virginio's tone sets your nerves singing with alarm. You arrange your features into an expression of modest humility, while your mind races through every detail of your performance, searching for cracks that might have revealed the truth beneath. I brought my own physician from Rome, Virginio continues, his gaze moving between you and Paolo with scientific attention. Dr. Aldro Brandini has studied under the masters in Padua and Bologna. Perhaps fresh eyes might see what others have missed. Fresh eyes. The phrase hits you like cold water. You've grown comfortable with Dr. Assers. Mercuriale learned to anticipate his questions, perfected your responses to his examinations. A new physician means new scrutiny, different questions, the possibility that someone might see patterns that familiarity has obscured. Of course, you say, your voice steady despite the hurricane building in your chest. Any help? Any possibility of improvement? Paolo, isn't that wonderful? But Paolo doesn't answer. His attention has drifted the way it does more frequently now, his eyes focusing on something beyond the visible world. You move to adjust his pillows with practiced tenderness, and for just a moment his gaze sharpens and fixes on your face with startling clarity. What you see there stops your breath in your throat. Recognition. Not the grateful acknowledgement of a husband appreciating his wife's care, but something deeper and more terrible. The knowledge of prey finally understanding the nature of its predator. Paolo's eyes, clear for perhaps the first time in months, look into yours and see not love but calculation, not devotion but deadly patience, not salvation but retribution measured out in drops. Isabella, he whispers, and your name on his lips sounds like a question and an accusation and a prayer all at once. You maintain your expression of loving concern even as you feel the foundation of your performance beginning to crack. Yes, amores. What do you need? Paolo continues to stare at you with that terrible clarity, his wasted features seeming to age years in the space of heartbeats. You never flinch anymore. When I'm in pain, when I cry out, you used to flinch. You used to weep, now you just watch. The observation cuts through 18 months of careful performance, like a blade through silk. You have indeed stopped flinching, stopped weeping genuine tears, stopped feeling anything but the cold satisfaction of work approaching completion. In perfecting your technique, you've lost the ability to counterfeit the emotions that would make your innocence believable. Paolo, you say carefully, aware that Virginio watches this exchange with hawk-like attention, you're confused. The illness. It makes you imagine things that aren't real. But Paolo's moment of clarity persists, and in it you see him remembering things, the way you always know exactly what to expect from his symptoms, how you never seem surprised by new developments in his condition, the precision with which you calculate his needs before he expresses them. A lifetime of casual cruelty hasn't prepared him for methodical revenge, but dying has apparently sharpened his perception beyond your ability to deceive. The wine, he says suddenly, his voice gaining strength from certainty. Every night you bring me wine, special wine, you said, blessed by the Archbishop for healing. But I never asked for blessed wine. I never. His breathing quickens, and you realize with sick fascination that fear is giving him energy his poisoned body shouldn't possess. God in heaven, Isabella, what have you done? The question hangs in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Virginio's attention sharpens to the point where you can feel it like heat against your skin. In the space of a few sentences, your husband has begun to unravel 18 months of perfect deception, and you find yourself facing a choice that will determine whether you die as a murderer or live as one. You could confess. Fall to your knees, beg forgiveness, claim madness brought on by years of abuse that half the court witnessed. You could throw yourself on the mercy of men who understand that women sometimes break under pressures they would never acknowledge creating. Instead, you smile. It's not the practiced smile of the devoted wife, nor the calculated expression of performed grief. It's something new, something that emerges from the deepest part of who you've become, the cold, satisfied smile of an artist finally ready to sign her masterpiece. Paolo, you say, your voice carrying a gentleness that somehow manages to sound more threatening than any scream, you're dying. Does it really matter how? The words fall into silence like stones into still water, creating ripples that spread outward to touch everything in the room. Virginio goes very still. Paolo's breath comes in short, panicked gasps. And you feel the strange relief of a performer finally allowed to drop her mask. 18 months, you continue, moving closer to Paolo's bed with predatory grace. 863 drops, carefully measured, patiently administered. You're not dying of some mysterious wasting disease, Amora. You're dying of me. Paolo tries to speak, but only manages a sound that might be your name or might be a prayer. His trembling hand reaches toward the bell rope that would summon servants, but you intercept it with gentle firmness, your fingers closing around his wrist with the tender possessiveness of a lover. Don't, you whisper, leaning close enough that your breath warms his ear. Don't rob me of this moment. I've worked so hard for it. Virginio finally finds his voice. Guards, he calls, but his shout lacks conviction, as if part of him understands that what he's witnessing transcends the simple categories of crime and punishment. You look up at him with perfect composure, still holding Paolo's wrist, still smiling that terrible new smile. They won't come in time, you say with the certainty of someone who has calculated every possibility. And Paolo won't last another hour. The dose I gave him this morning was larger than usual. Paolo's eyes widen with the horror of final understanding, but beneath the fear you see something else, a recognition that approaches respect. In his last moments, your husband finally understands that he married not a victim, but a predator patient, enough to spend 18 months teaching him the meaning of helplessness. His breathing grows shallower, more erratic, and you count each labored inhalation like notes in a musical composition approaching its finale. This is your masterpiece, your revenge, your work of art painted in poison, and performed with the devotion of a lifetime's hatred distilled into perfect patience. Paolo Giordano Orsini dies as the afternoon sun reaches its zenith, his last breath emerging as a whisper that might be your name or might be a curse. You close his eyes with the tenderness of a loving wife, then turn to face Virginio with the serene composure of someone who has finally completed the work that gave her life meaning. Now, you say, smoothing your skirts with hands that no longer tremble, you may call your guards. Che, how well, prison. T. Florence, July 16, 1576. 2 years after Paolo's death, they come for you in the hour before dawn, when the world exists in that liminal space between night and day, between sleeping and waking, between one life and whatever comes after. You've been expecting them. Not today specifically, but eventually, inevitably. The Medici family does not permit scandals to linger, even when the scandal concerns one of their own daughters. Especially then. You sit in your nightgown by the window of your chambers. These rooms that have become your world since Paolo's death, since the investigation that quietly concluded what everyone already knew, since your brother Francesco decided that some truths are too dangerous to acknowledge publicly. The silk cord lies coiled on your dressing table like a sleeping serpent, and you wonder if your executioner chose it for its beauty or its symbolism. Even your death will be aesthetically pleasing, performed with the attention to appearances that has governed every aspect of your life. The men who enter move with professional efficiency, their faces masks of courtly indifference. You recognize one of them, Captain Benedetti of your brother's personal guard, a man who has probably performed this service before for other inconvenient relatives. He bows with the same respect he might show any Medici princess, as if he's come to escort you to Mass rather than to eternity. Madonna, he says quietly, it is time. You nod with the composure that has never abandoned you, not even now. I understand. Standing, you move to your dressing table and pick up the silk cord, feeling its weight in your hands. It's beautiful work, probably crafted by the same artisans who made the bonds that held you in marriage, the same hands that wove the threads of the system that created you. May I have a moment? Captain Benedetti inclines his head slightly. Professional courtesy, perhaps, or recognition that even condemned women deserve dignity in their final minutes. He withdraws to the doorway while you face the mirror one last time. The woman who looks back at you has travelled far from the 15-year-old girl who painted sunlight on water. Her eyes hold knowledge that no convent school ever taught, wisdom gained through 18 months of patient murder and 2 years of quiet imprisonment. She is beautiful still, but it's the beauty of winter, crystalline, perfect, and absolutely cold. You think of Paolo in his final moments, that flash of recognition when he finally understood what you had become. You think of Bianca Capello, who taught you that survival sometimes requires advanced education in subjects no university acknowledges. You think of all the women throughout history who learned to speak fluency in violence because it was the only language their world permitted them to use. The irony tastes bitter as poison on your tongue. In killing Paolo, you became exactly what this system demanded you become. Not the artist who might have painted masterpieces, but the perfect product of a world that treats women as property and violence as statecraft. You are not an aberration. You are the logical conclusion of everything you were taught about power, about survival, about the lengths to which the powerless must go to claim even the smallest measure of justice. They will write about you, you know. Not truthfully. The truth is too dangerous, too revealing of the machinery that created you. Instead, they will make you a cautionary tale about female wickedness, about the dangers of giving women too much freedom or education or time to think. They will transform your story into a moral lesson that carefully avoids examining the morality of the system that made you necessary. But perhaps, in some hidden corner of some palazzo, another girl will hear your story and understand its real lesson, that the marriage bed can become a battlefield, that devotion can be weaponized, that patience and poison can accomplish what prayers and tears never could. Perhaps she will remember that Isabella de' Medici chose to become a monster rather than remain a victim, and in that choice she will find the courage to choose differently. Or perhaps she will choose exactly as you did. Perhaps she too will learn that sometimes the only path to freedom runs through a wine glass, that sometimes love and murder become indistinguishable, that sometimes the price of survival is the complete transformation of self into something the world cannot ignore. You set down the mirror and turn toward Captain Benedetti. The silk cord feels warm in your hands, as if it contains not death, but another kind of transformation. You have been many things in your 33 years: daughter, wife, artist, victim, executioner. Now you will be one thing more, a cautionary tale that reveals more about its tellers than its subject. I am ready, you say, and your voice carries the same calm certainty that sustained you through 18 months of methodical murder. As the cord tightens around your throat, your last thought is not of God, or forgiveness, or the heaven your tutors promised awaited obedient women. Instead, you think of a young girl in some other palazzo, just learning that her marriage has been arranged, her life redistributed like coins in a merchant's ledger. You think of her standing before a mirror, watching her childhood die in her own eyes, and you hope, with the last breath of a woman who chose monstrous freedom over virtuous slavery, that she will find a different way. But if she doesn't, if she chooses the path you walked, you hope she will be more careful with the dosage. You hope she will remember that patience is both weapon and shield, that the perfect wife can commit the perfect murder, that sometimes the only way to escape a cage is to become something too dangerous to contain. The world grows dark around the edges, but your last sensation is not of endings, but of continuity. The sense that somewhere, in some other time and place, another woman is learning that survival sometimes requires fluency in languages no one ever taught her to speak. The system that created you continues to create others like you, continues to transform daughters into wives, wives into victims, victims into whatever they must become to endure. Your story ends, but the story continues. In every arranged marriage, every silenced voice, every woman who learns that her body belongs to others while her soul remains her own, they will kill you for what you became, but they cannot kill what made you necessary. The machine that produced Isabella the Poisoner continues its work, grinding lives into shapes that serve power rather than truth, creating new monsters to replace the ones it destroys. In the end, you are not the crime but the evidence, not the disease but the symptom, not the aberration but the product of a system so perfectly designed to create exactly what it then condemns that it might be called a work of art itself, if anyone possessed the honesty to acknowledge its true architecture. The sun rises over Florence, as it has for centuries, illuminating palazzos where other daughters wake to discover their fates have been decided without consulting their dreams. The silk cord completes its work with the efficiency that has always characterized Medici solutions to inconvenient problems. But in some hidden chamber, in some underground classroom, another woman measures poison with scientific precision and wonders how many drops it will take to balance the scales that were never meant to weigh in her favor. The student has become the teacher. The victim has become the method. The system has created its perfect product and destroyed her for being exactly what it made her. The dance continues, beautiful and terrible as a Renaissance painting, as inevitable as sunrise, as patient as death measuring itself out one drop at a time.